Okay, quick, before we get started, I've got a big announcement. I've just launched my new Substack channel at drewtv.substack.com. That's drewtv.substack.com. I've been holding off on doing this for a while because I wanted to make sure that I could give subscribers more bang for their buck than the $8 and change they're going to spend a month. And here we are. With the subscription, you'll get access to paywall-only content, which are going to include private Zoom call live streams with former guests and friends of the show. We'll set those up kind of with like a theme, and then we'll just all get in there and see where it goes. You also get 10% off across the board on everything at all Drew TV websites, which now include jonesplantationfilm.com and the Barnum World Fourth Wall merch site, and more sites coming soon. You'll also have a community of like-minded people you can connect with. Very important. And I'll be periodically dropping bonuses and things for subscribers. Look, I'm never going to be financed by the Hollywood system, nor do I want to be. I made a decision several years ago to not be chained by that system, and I'm trying to build something outside of it. And so if you like what we're doing here, sign up. If you're watching this and you've already signed up, thank you. Okay. This episode was brought to you by Jones Plantation Film. If you haven't seen the indie cult classic Jones Plantation Film yet, go watch that film. It's available now at jonesplantationfilm.com. That's jonesplantationfilm.com, and on most major platforms.
Bo Jones!
Lastly, my new film Barnum World is out, and per our Indiegogo campaign promise, it's available for free. So the best place to watch that would be at my Drew TV YouTube channel or my Drew TV Rumble channel.
Barnum statements only work if you can't recognize them. That's important.
Now, time to start this episode of Maverick in the Machine.
Insanity is what I call society. Don't tell me what to do, don't tell me how to be. I don't trust the government, I know they lie to me. They could like my body, yo, for my soul and mind to breathe.
7 C's. What's going on, man? And that's 7, the number, S-E-E-S, 7 C's, the double entendre. This can be tough to push those names out sometimes, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I've had that name for like 10, 15 years. I don't know. I made it when I was in like high school, and I Googled it one day, and I was like, oh, nobody's using that name. And then, started using that for like my Xbox gamer tag and all that stuff back in the day. There is a band called like Theoses or something that comes up when you Google it sometimes, but that seems to be about it.
What about going with your real name sometime? No?
It's mostly
Too
just,
late?
man. Yeah, well, it's not like I know the government knows who I am, like they have access to all that information, but it's more like the crazies, right? Like the ones that can maybe get like a little neurotic about internet personalities. Like I know the whole thing with like people showing up to people's houses or trying to swat them and stuff. And I got family here, not really trying to invite that sort of stuff in if I can.
Yeah. I mean, it's if they want you, they're going to get you. But
Yeah.
I understand. Your point's well taken. So tell everybody a little, quick something about where they can, first of all, where they can find you. I like to do that up front, and we'll do it at the end as well. And we'll put the links to your stuff in the show notes for the delight of the audience. But can you tell people what you do, what you're up to, your links and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm most active on X, DARPA's favorite website, it seems like these days. And I also stream on YouTube and Rumble when I can. It's mostly like live research sessions. So I do like these live webs that kind of like visualize all of the connections between people. I don't know about you, but I started doing that because I would like, read like things from like Whitney Webb or like these huge, dossiers and things. And it'd be hard to kind of keep all of that in my head. So selfishly starting to do that to keep track of everything. People liked it. It seemed to resonate with people. And so I started doing them live and really outsourcing to like anybody that's willing to just really contribute to the effort to like show people what's going on.
Yeah, you use, what is that program you use? I've seen that. It's like a project management kind of program, and you take these cases like Palantir and their connections to the government and blah, 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 and you draw it out, these like magnificent, what would you call it? Like
mind maps?
Networks.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you using? What is that?
So that's called Obsidian. Found it a couple years ago, and I always thought it was just like a note-taking app for the most part. But there's all sorts of things you can do with it. I use the canvas mode for that mapping, and it's also like open source, and they have tons of like community plugins and stuff that are absolutely free. And it's been great. It's been great.
Obsidian. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I want to get into all the stuff because you're really big on the technocracy and the digital prison. Did you dig into the Epstein files? I can't remember.
I have a little bit, so just sort of like exploring a lot of their connections. The Edge came up a lot in a lot of my research, which was like this early like tech convention that had people like the founders of Google were there, Elon was there, Jeff Bezos was there, the Wojcicki's who were over like YouTube and 23andMe were there back in the day, and that came up a lot. And then some of the things from like One Nation Under Blackmails come up, some of like Johnny Vedmore's work as well on like the Nicole Junkerman stuff, and so I have a few different things that sort of delve into it, but I've never like tried to map it all because I feel like that's like a life's worth of work. But I'm up to the challenge.
Well, the one thing I really like about you, besides your work, is that, and this is the thing we always talk about here, is you have integrity. And the other day you were somebody, I guess a large account wanted to interview you, and you wouldn't do it because they get sponsored by a company called Wellness. Is it Wellness?
The wellness company, yeah.
Yeah. And you were like, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to work, promote that company. We can get into that. I just was wondering, what is there anything like, how were you raised? Why were you brought up? Why do you think that you're like this? Because life could be a lot easier if you weren't.
Honestly, I mean, it's one of those things where like, I never really had much, growing up, we weren't exactly like homeless per se, but it was always like paycheck to paycheck and things like that. And I guess like, my stepdad was kind of an asshole, but he did drill into my head, like a man's only worth his word. And I think that really kind of stuck with me as I've kind of gone, because I've gone through like my shares of ups and downs in life. But it's like, at the end of the day, I'll always have that, like my principles and my pride and integrity and things like that. That's something that nobody can strip away from me unless I let them or make that choice.
Where are you from?
So I lived in Kentucky for quite some time, and now I'm in Tennessee, in the southeast. But before that, I think I lived in Florida from like the time I was 1 to 5, and then moved up to Kentucky and moved down here in high school.
And tell me about the wellness company. What's going on with that? And because I have some thoughts on that, but tell me what's going on with that.
So I noticed that, this is all a little retrospective because I wasn't really, I guess like being very vocal about the things that, I was aware of and stuff like during, COVID or the pandemic. But there was this like health freedom movement that sort of spawned from that. That had like sort of aligned itself with different characters, like RFK Jr. was a huge part of that. People like Mike Flynn were also heavily involved. You may remember Vladimir Zelenko, the guy behind like the hydroxychloroquine stuff. And basically he kind of got together with this guy named Foster Colson and a man named David Lopez, who was like a special projects manager over Blackwater. Which kind of ties in like Eric Prince and that whole like intelligence circle there. For people that don't know, Blackwater is like a very prominent like private military group. They kind of rose into the ranks by being very close to Alvin Krongard, who was like the director of the CIA, ended up on the board of Blackwater, and they ended up getting a lot of contracts in Iraq and the Middle East right after 9/11.
So, not to jump in, but Blackwater that's just military for hire, basically.
Yeah.
What do they call that?
Private military.
Yeah, but there's another word for it. It's mercenaries.
Mercenary, yeah.
Yeah, and they're serious. Like
Yes.
they can take countries over. And what do you think about Eric Prince? I mean, I know he's in that Blackwater thing, but I don't know. Like, I feel like as a person, if I met him, I probably would get along with him. Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on him?
I don't think that he's good person per se, just because he, he's got like the Frontier Services Group is another one. They were actually like connected to like bombing a birthday party in Haiti that ended up killing like 8 kids. There was the Nisour Square massacre that killed like 11 people, and he seems to be connected to a lot of these different things where he sort of acts as a proxy so that the American government can kind of absolve themselves if something goes sideways or, something like that. And it was actually found that, during the Bush administration, Eric Prince was, more closely connected to Dick Cheney and as far as like military operations than like most of Congress, most of the people within the Bush administration. So, he sort of acts as this way to sort of accomplish violence and destabilization on behalf of the American government while we get to pretend like we're not technically involved.
Well, it feels very end of empire with all this mercenary hiring and stuff. This is very I'm not an expert on Rome, but I know that was one thing that they had towards the end. They started losing these wars because they were just hiring all these mercenaries that at the end of the day, when push came to shove, they didn't really give a shit. So they would lose.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's honestly kind of interesting because like I've seen research that sort of connects him to like the Knights of Malta and a lot of the things that sort of stem from like the Catholic Church, which, was kind of like a secret society ongoing of, the elites in the Roman culture back then. So it's kind of interesting to see this parallel and them call us the new Rome. And, it seems like it's connected at least through these different groups.
We got to get into all this. So before we do, just finish your wellness company. Is it the wellness company? Sorry, it's like the third time I've asked you. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
And so with the wellness company, that involves people like Foster Colson, and you have Peter McCullough is actually a part of that as well. And, Peter McCullough was sort of involved with Robert Malone, and Robert Malone claiming to like create the mRNA vaccine that they, speak out so vehemently against. And with the wellness company, so they sort of sponsor like a ton of influencers, everyone from like Candace Owens to, I could pull up a list. Let me see if I can find that actually really quick.
It's a smart marketing move, though. I mean, the podcasts are where it's at. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think Joe Rogan kind of like popularized that as far as like setting the precedence to say like, there is the possibility to have like large money and investments and things in this podcasting game.
To give his credit as due, actually, Tim Ferriss was doing it before him.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, and they're like, my understanding, it's like $50,000 a spot. Whew. Yeah,
that's crazy.
So if you're doing 4 spots a show, why wouldn't you do 3 shows a week?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I understand at the end of the day that like, life costs money and people got to chase that. And so like, I can't ever hate somebody for trying to like monetize something. It's really like if they have contracts with the government or like they're getting paid directly from like Palantir or something like that, or one of these like decision making influences kind of being involved, I think is really where things start to get like problematic.
Well, the thing is that and you'll go into this wellness thing, but like I feel like some of these, you're the guy that just kills like, oh, him too. You're the him too guy. I'm like, it's always like, oh, him too. He's like, oh, I thought he was on our side. No, he's not. Him too. Yeah, it's like every day I'll post like, oh, I thought I liked him. Him too, huh?
Yeah.
So you're telling me McCullough, he always seemed a little shady. Is he shady, McCullough? And yeah.
Yeah, he's in some like outside circles with people that are connected to like Scientology and Zionism and things like that.
Oh,
so,
of course. It's like the last door before you open the last door, and that's just Satan.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say?
Well, it's interesting too because like there's this whole thing with like the technocracy angle of everything, and I think that's sort of like front loading a lot of the biodigital convergence, which is like the introduction of like nanotechnology, which would include like that mRNA stuff and nanobots, whether you want to say they're like little tiny machines or like tiny organisms that have been like genetically coded to perform some sort of function, which is exactly what they say, the mRNA vaccine is. And the parent company, Coulson Capital, that owns the wellness company, is also over a nanotechnology company called NanoBioSim, which is run by this lady that's connected to like DARPA, the DoD, Lockheed Martin, PepsiCo for some reason. Like they have a nanotech department that she's over, and all of these other things. And like that makes me kind of question like what's actually in that stuff that they sell. I don't have the means to sort of like investigate it myself, but it is worrisome.
Yeah, that's interesting. Why would Pepsi have a nanotech?
Yeah.
It's nanotech. This is like looks like Matrix shit. This is like they put these like little machines inside you and they do whatever they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So so the wellness company, who's getting? It's like Candace Owens, Dave Smith, right?
Yep. Jack Posobiec, the guy that held up the.
Oh well, that guy. Yeah. Well, who didn't know he was? Please.
Mike Flynn, Arian Wexler, Jessica Reed Krause, DC Drano, Chad Prather, Benny Johnson, Brett Weinstein, Alex Stein, Kyle Seraphim, Alex Clark. Died suddenly is a part of that as well. Breitbart was getting funding from them. Daily Clout, Ted Nugent, Patriot Barbie, Mel K is actually sponsored by them. James O'Keefe.
I'm not surprised by that. Surprised by that.
Glenn Greenwald, sponsored by the wellness company. Alex Jones has pushed them before. I'm not sure if he's got like a sponsor code or whatever that looks like. Shannon Joy is another one. Truth Seeker.
Shannon Joy?
Yeah.
No, listen, some of these people might have just gotten, hey, we want to sponsor you. And they're like, oh, okay, wellness company. And they didn't do the deep dive, do you think? Or do you give a pass or no?
So this is actually something that like came up on Tinfoil Hat when I talked about this. And okay. Sam kind of pushed back on Mel K a little bit. And it is one of those things where it's like, just because they are on the sponsored list doesn't mean they're like, I'm going to get in bed with like, certain people and make money and lie and deceive my audience, right? It is, could very well simply be one of those things where it's like they didn't do their due diligence on something and they just decided to kind of take money. And I don't think that there's anything like inherently malicious about that, but I do think that like, if that comes up, like it's really dependent on their reaction to it. Like, are they going to be receptive to this like valid criticism and maybe do something about it, or is it one of those things where they're going to ignore it and continue to like generate money for these interests? I guess is really the big thing to me.
Yeah, that's the thing, because at the end of the day, you have to sit there and look into the camera and go, you guys need to sign up for wellness company and make sure you use the code. And it's like, once you have the information, you can only do with what you have knowledge with, right? So once you know, and then you really have to make a personal decision. And like I said, to sit there and read the copy that they give you, knowing that, I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to, people can make their own decisions on that, but I don't know where I was going with that. Yeah, I guess once people figure it out, I mean, I hate to I really think, like, the thing is, the one thing that does go on is that there's this like purity spiraling everywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, I don't need everybody to agree with me on everything, I just feel like they do one little thing. He's controlled up, or Dave, why did you vote for Trump? You're Dave Smith. He voted for, he pushed Trump. And I was like, if the man thinks there's two options and he really believes Trump can fix it, I can't blame him for not voting for. If they believe in voting and they think there's two options, who's going to vote for Kamala Harris? I mean, you have to be mentally retarded to do something that's stupid. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's one of those things where, I think that people are able to be ignorant. I think that everyone kind of, has the excuse of like, we are manufactured to be ignorant by the powers that be through like public education and the media and all of these things. I think it is one of those things where, there's a little bit of like maybe feigning ignorance that happens a lot, where people may say like, oh, well, I didn't know. And that's kind of hard to gauge, like we already have to use like a court system to try to prove intent, which is still basically impossible. But I do think it is one of those things where, if I begin to like compromise and like make concessions on things, they'll change me like 1%. And then, a year later, it's like, well, now I'm changing another 1 to 5% over like making these compromises on these different things. And I honestly think that that's how they sort of get people to shift, like their own paradigms, is making these like little concessions here and there. And so, I do sort of understand the like purity spiraling thing and how that, in extreme cases can lead to like what we had with the whole woke movement and things like that. Right. I think it's one of those things where it's like, following the golden rule, and it's like, I wouldn't want people to lie to me. And if, they said something and made a mistake, I would want them to like come clean. So if I end up making a mistake and I come clean and, I'm always just proceeding with honesty, I really feel like I don't have a whole lot to worry about, I guess. And so I don't know, man. It's a tough fine line, because I'm at the point where I basically feel like I can't trust anybody without them earning it. And even half the people that earn it is like, well, that could just be a Fed on payroll that's like, being paid to earn my trust and this, that, and the other. And it's tough, man. It's tough navigating this space.
Well, I mean, obviously you're intelligent, but you have what I think is a way more valuable quality, and that's wisdom. I wish I had the wisdom that you had when I was your age. I didn't. But what you're talking about is something I've talked about before, and that's sort of like if life is, metaphorically a trip on a ship across the world on the ocean, and every time you make the ship go up a 16th of a degree off course.
Yeah.
You fast forward 20 years, now you're in a storm in the South Pole, and you got to flip the thing around. You might not make it. And, I'm somebody I was in a storm, and, it's really important that, I'll just compromise a little here. I'll just compromise a little here. And next thing you know, you're in hell. I mean, really. Yeah. So, that's good on you to know that. So we talked about the wellness company. Let's talk about the technocracy. Are we going to, I think, are you black-pilled or white-pilled on this? Like, I don't think it's going to work, the Panopticon. What's your thoughts on it?
I would say that it's kind of two different levels. So like when it comes to my own personal self, I am super white-pilled. Like I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of like, what I'm up against and the level and the extent and the intent of these people as well. Where I get really black-pilled is like society as a whole. It seems like, we're just now starting to move the needle on public perception of like the Epstein stuff. And it's like, man, that shit was happening 30 years ago. And we should have been talking about it when it was happening. And it's like, what's happening right now? Well, the only way you're going to see that is go to DARPA's website, go to these scientific, institutions that Epstein was funding, and see the things that they're releasing in their studies. And these are the things that are going to become the military applications of tomorrow. And I feel like a lot of people get like drudged up in like the politics stuff and the sensationalism stuff. And, so that keeps them distracted away from seeing like, there's graphene oxide in the clouds, and they're able to use that and manipulate it with like wireless signals. And I don't know, it's really tough, because you try to like shout that stuff and it almost feels like you're screaming into the void, because you're not like bashing a politician or like talking bad about a celebrity or something. So nobody wants to pay attention to that shit. So a little bit of both.
Where are we going? They are cloud seeding, one, and then where are we going? I know it's a big question, but
yeah, man. So I like to take a look at like the white papers and things like that, and I think that the COVID pandemic and 5G was sort of like a huge shift, not only with like the way the economy works, but with people's mentality and the way that we're sort of ingratiated with like this global digital space. I think that a lot of the like health tracking stuff was kind of used to like measure, activity and people's, sort of medical histories and their activities that they do, their financial information and all of this stuff to create like a digital twin of them, basically, which is, the term they're starting to throw around now. And I think eventually we're going to reach a point where it's like, everything is going to be online. We have the digital ID laws that are coming out. We have crypto regulation bills that are being implemented that are tying into like natural resources are being tokenized, streams and rivers and water. All of that's being, slowly privatized. And, they say that like 6G is going to launch by 2030. The backbone of that is autonomous, always aware, omnipotent AI and blockchain. And so everything will be like permanently digitally recorded. It's going to be tied and tokenized to like your digital ID and all of your like online internet activity. Most people don't know that like your social media is tokenized already. Anytime you go to like a post and you have that long number string, that is your post ID. You have a user ID, a device ID. All that's going to tie into your digital ID with like the Kids Online Safety Act stuff that they're pushing. And so everything that you do and say in a digital space will affect like your finances, your ability to like transact in a society, your access to like certain establishments. We've already seen that sort of put in place with the pandemic rules and stuff, and I think a lot of that's going to be pushed by like the anti-Semitism, free speech laws that are happening, criticism of Israel or even just the government in general. And it's going to be scary, man, with like smart cities that are coming and stuff. It's hard to say, but I do kind of envision, their goal being 2030, that we're going to start seeing shit out of like Blade Runner and things like that. Like, I don't think that's too far off from a reality.
I predict, and I have a $1 bet with Legal Man, that early 2030s is when the regime, I look at us as Americans, and then I look at the U.S. regime as occupiers, and obviously they're occupied at this point fully and completely by Israel, or they're in bed together, whatever it is. I predict that that's going to dissolve in the 2030s, and we're going to have massive secession.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like. And what do you think happens after they lose this war with Iran? And what's your take on the whole thing? Sorry.
So yeah, absolutely. I think that there is a lot more involvement of like the religious beliefs and specifically like the Kabbalah when it comes to like the Chabad Lubavitch group that sort of seems to be like, calling the shots when it comes to, being in the Oval Office. And, they're sort of over like the Likud party of Israel, which is Netanyahu's party. They're in bed with Netanyahu or with Putin. You can see Putin meeting with him all the time. He has Beryl Lazar as his like really close friend that he grew up with. And so, I see all of these things happening, and I almost wonder if it's sort of like manufacturing the prophecy that they have as far as like the end of the world and the apocalyptic times. And that sort of like giving leeway to, let global governance be run by AI. And to establish like a bunch of seemingly independent like network city-states. So you have things like Pronomos Capital that's funding like Praxis. They're talking about like turning Greenland into a network of various like independent free states. I think that there's like kind of a small trial with that's happened in like El Salvador, for example, where he's like fully embracing technocracy, and he's working with people like Brock Pierce on Tether. They adopted Bitcoin as like their official currency, and he has that Supermax prison. Works with Eric Prince actually with some private military stuff, and it just seems to have gone like full authoritarian. And it's one of those things where it's like, if you criticize those things, people will assume that you're like pro chaos and pro like criminals running rampant and things like that. And it's like, that's not it. But that was sort of drummed up through like private military intervention and accelerationists in order to sort of justify the sweeping military state that was installed. And I think that this war is going to kind of get a lot of global powers involved, and it's going to get to the point where we're all going to be sort of rocky as far as the economy, culture, all of those things. And I think that Iran and the Islamic culture, as well as Christianity and Judaism, they all sort of see like that end time apocalyptic event as sort of like a good thing in a sense, where it's like that's what's going to bring back the Messiah, the prophet, and that's when we're all going to be saved. And so that I think it reaches like very dangerous territory when you start getting like the religious extremists and political power like we have now, because they very well could just manufacture the prophecy to happen and then stage it and fool everybody.
Well, when you're talking about the third temple, and so
Yes.
that's not real Christianity. The Christians that are pushing that have been, if you look into the creation, I don't know if you ever look into the creation of dispensational Christianity.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah, it's like
funded
the
by
Christian
Zionists.
Zionists, and yeah.
Yeah, it's funded by Zionists, and the guy that wrote that stuff was a complete scammer, and it's completely retarded. And if anybody ever looked into that, and these people running around, and a lot of these pastors are just complete scammers that are just paid by Zionists to push this shit. Have you looked into that at all?
So I dug a little bit into Pat Robertson back in the day, and I found out that he was like fraternity brothers with some weird people. I'd have to go back and find it.
Okay.
But let me see here.
And if these frat brothers, they're buddies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always make it a point to like tell people, that colleges and stuff and like fraternities and sororities are like a huge deal, because that's where you first start to get the it's like a gauging, especially with like the hazing and the initiation stuff. Like, is this person willing to denigrate themselves and do compromising things in order to be part of the club? And I think that that's where they do a lot of their recruiting.
We also share some of your most fun, intimate times at a really important age. That's the age right before you're going to go out into the world. You're getting, drunk with these guys. You're with them 24/7. You're living oftentimes with them in a frat house. Like, you are close.
Yeah. Oh, it's so he's Pat Robertson is Tau Kappa Epsilon with Howard Schultz.
Teeks.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's Howard Schultz, Robert Byrd, Steve Forbes of Forbes magazine, Aaron Rodgers, Elvis Presley, and Willie Nelson.
Wait. Well, I mean, there's lots of Teeks, but Aaron Rodgers is too young to be in the same frat as those. I mean, at the same time.
Not at the same, but they're all in that same.
Oh,
fraternity.
well, there's Teeks all over there's millions of Teeks all over the country, though.
Yeah.
Who was in his frat house? Like, what school did he go to?
Oh,
Do you know that?
No, that's a good question.
That can help you, but that's not too big of a deal. You know what I mean? If he's in the frat and they're like going to school at the same time, they're tight. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was just one of those weird things where I was like, looked into Pat Robinson, and he was part of the same frat as Elvis Presley. It's super weird.
Yeah, I mean, the Teeks where I wasted my time at college, and it was just like a bunch of beer drinking dudes. I never joined a frat. I must have known, and it really would have made my college experience a lot more fun if everybody was in a frat. But I don't know. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Maybe it's like that anti-conformist sort of thing.
It was in there, even though I had no clue what was going on at that time in my life. I was just like an empty vessel at that point. Okay, so we talked about so you think the war is going to bring in this sort of like. I want to talk to you about El Salvador. Mm-hmm. So I was there. I went down there, toured the whole country. And I don't know the ins and outs of the details of what Bukele is doing. Okay. But I could be wrong. I have a sneaking suspicion. Maybe I think he's sincere. Like, I think he actually loves his people. And I don't know. When I was there, the people loved him for the most part. And the place now, El Salvadorans I've been all over Latin America. I love that area of the world. The people are generally really like down to earth and really nice. Had very few bad experiences. El Salvadorans are on like another level. Like, I mean, I've never met people as like kind they're not just friendly. They're like really, and they're everywhere you go. Like we would call it like the laugh, because we get in the morning and go out into the shit, because their cities are vibrant. Like America's very like people sold cars. Like Latin American cities, you go out and people are out, and it was just like all you hear is laughter, just laughter everywhere, and they're always hugging on each other and everything. Anyways, it does make them very susceptible.
Yeah.
Which concerns me moving forward. Very susceptible. They discover some sort of resource. They're going to have a shine bomb down there as the president. I get them. They're very susceptible because they're so nice. And the prison thing, everybody sees the thing with the guys in the prison, but I don't know what was he supposed to do. Nobody's as opposed to the state force as I am, but like when he got elected, they were literally shooting randos, apparently. Randos in the street to just cause chaos, and there was a day where they shot like 80 people in San Salvador. Just mom's walking home with her kid, boom, right in the head, just to cause chaos. And he apparently said he went to a room with his closest confidants, and they just prayed for a miracle. Like, what do we do here? I know he's got involved in Bitcoin. There is an element to Bitcoin. I went to the Bitcoin conference, and I'll wrap this up in a second because nobody wants to hear me talk. But I went to this Bitcoin conference in LA a couple years ago, and it was a complete waste of time. But there were serious people there. They're very serious about freedom. They still believe that Bitcoin's going to bring them freedom. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that guy? I mean, it seems like he's like the technocracy guy. He's sort of like the test run. But is there a possibility that he doesn't realize that, or do you think he's nefarious?
I think he's nefarious, and I just say that because at the end of the day, he is in the government, and he is like actively working with like private military companies, with companies like Palantir. He has made like pro-Zionist sentiments in the past, and to me that's really concerning, because I sort of see it as like, when we had Joe Biden as president, right? Like Joe Biden was supposed to win so that it would drive us as a country, like as a culture, economically, with the forced mass immigration stuff, to a point where we would then clamor for someone like Donald Trump, who during his first term, was in bed with Peter Thiel, was in bed with Susie Wiles, was, responsible for the COVID, like the CARES Act that printed trillions of dollars and shut down the country and set up this whole like new economic council with like all the big wigs, and like Larry Fink was there as an economic advisor. And like, so despite all of that, they made the current administration so bad that all of that stuff would be swept under the rug and people would just accept him, with flaws and all. And I kind of think that is what has happened with Bukele as well. I think that's what's happening with Keir Starmer. I think that's what's happening with Trudeau in Canada. And it's like they're intentionally taking a dive so that people will make those concessions and say, well, at least he's not putting gay people in movies and video games and stuff. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But what about like the Palantir drones? What about like the Supermax prison, who he can just throw anybody under? What about the fact that like he offered the Epcot or the Supermax prison to Donald Trump to like circumvent due diligence so that he could ship people to it without a trial, without a right to trial or anything like that? Like I think those things are all kind of concerning, and at the end of the day, I kind of see it as another Trojan horse.
We'll see what happens. Well, time will tell with him. He might just be a hard right guy.
Yeah,
he might be like a Caesarian kind of figure. We'll see. I'm not opposed to what you're saying. We'll see what happens. I did do a video about him that I was pretty positive when I was there, because I was so impressed with how safe it was and how. But I could have been, walking around with glazed eyes because I was on vacation. You know what I mean? There is a possibility. So I could be completely wrong. I guess time will tell.
I think that like high trust society and like cleanliness and order and stuff are like sort of like the effects of the cause of authoritarian government. It's like, well, if you do litter, you might go to prison, or if you are rioting or protesting or what have you, like they could just kill you. So it's I think it is probably an excellent place to go visit and stuff, but I wonder, like, is there really going to be like the opportunity to like have free speech and like truly like do what you want without being on like a digital system with them and digital ID and having to use like crypto and stuff? Like, is that something that's like very possible there. I don't know myself, but
Well, I would tell you this: you should go visit, man. You should go down there and visit. We should take a trip down there and visit.
Yeah,
and we'll film. We could film. I'm not joking. I could tell you this: that Latin America, that order for crime, but order. No, one thing I love about it down there is it's messy. It's extremely messy. That's what one of the things I just feel like I'm alive down there. It's just you never know what's going to happen. It's just, there's a lot of action. There's a lot of mess. And the crypto thing, it's more of like nobody's using it. Okay, nobody's using Bitcoin down there.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a thing where it's kind of opened their mind to new possibilities outside of like. I'm giving you the positive. Yeah, exactly. It's not all loved. A lot of people don't like it, but I don't know. It's well, I guess like I said, time will tell. I'm open-minded to being wrong because everybody's evil. These governments is like they never not let me down. Speaking of, is Donald Trump the biggest rug pull? And I mean, I knew he wasn't going to do anything he said he was going to do, but I cannot believe how pathetic he is. And this is the thing that they're coming out with now, that while he was not even defending him, like the excuse is like, well, the story is that he was, they threatened his kids and, Israel was going to strike first. I'm like, look, then you know what he should have done? He's freaking 80 years old. You're going to die, dude. Yeah. Get on television, say, here's the deal. This country has taken over our country. My kids' lives are in danger. They want to invade Iran. I don't want to do it. We need to, whatever. We need to do something about this right now. I mean, obviously, I haven't thought this through, but he needs to get on television if he's a real man, put his life on the line and cross the Rubicon and say, these people are going to cause World War III. They're fucking nuts. And they control our government. And I've been afraid to do this because they're going to kill me. They're going to kill my kids. And, and go from there. If that's the case, don't just go to war because you're afraid for your kids, your life. That's what Martyr Maid was posting about. I'm like, I don't care. You just like, something's going to kill you, dude. Go out like a man.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's one of those things where it's like I would love to be wrong, but I feel like he's been in bed with them since day one, and that is exactly why like he would never come out and openly say anything like that.
He's on board.
Yeah, and has been, for decades and decades. Like you go back and you like look at his his uncle's connections to like MIT. He was mentored by Vannevar Bush, which was the guy that founded Raytheon. Another thing that Vannevar Bush was responsible for was creating like the first venture capital firm, which is exactly what BlackRock is, which is exactly what Peter Thiel's Founders Fund is. And I think that those were like a hyper acceleration sort of way to, create all of these like fake, they're basically pushing military technologies and stuff through the private sector with these front companies like Google and Apple and things like that. And that was all started by, people that taught Donald Trump's uncle, who took the Tesla, work and ended up creating his own like high voltage company. And now it's coming out like EMF is an invisible poison that kills everybody. And go figure that his nephew would then come out with the COVID vaccine, another, mass poison technique. And, I would argue is sort of setting the way for 6G. I mean, hell, he was responsible for launching 5G in America during the COVID pandemic. And I think that was just sort of a backbone for digital mass surveillance that we have now. Like Palantir loves the idea of 5G. They love the idea of 6G and everyone running around with smartphones all the time. And that's the same guy that was in bed with Jeffrey Epstein, spying on people and blackmailing everyone. Like now they just do all that digitally through our smartphones. And it's just, I don't know, man, it's crazy.
So yeah, is he what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, obviously he's nefarious, but is he diabolical, or is he just kind of go along with? You think he just was lying the whole time? He was in bed with the Zionists, and this was the plan the entire time.
I absolutely think that was 100% the case. I think that Obama was put there to do everything that he had done in order to set the country up culturally and things like that to accept this like Ronald Reagan 2.0 character. Mm-hmm. And, you go back and you look and it's like, okay, well, AIDS was under Reagan. That was I question the legitimacy of all of that with like the virology stuff, and then compare that to COVID. And then we have like, the Camp David Accords. That's like the Abraham Accords that we have now. Ronald Reagan had assassination attempts. Donald Trump had assassination attempts. The Zionist connections. It goes on and on, man. Like, you bring in like Zbigniew Brzezinski and things, and it just gets real. I think it's just been a long line of like pulling the wool over people's eyes and saying like, here's your next guy. And I mean, like, your films dive into that very, very well. And I just sort of see that pattern over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, I always, when people say how great Reagan was, I always say, well, okay, he was really great. Are you freer? Are we freer since Reagan was president? Is there less surveillance, less police, less taxes? Are things better since Reagan? Okay, so what was the point?
Yeah.
Even if everything you said about him is true, which it isn't, it's just a fake little tack right for a little bit. But then he's doing, when they tack right, they get away with a lot of murder metaphorically, because everybody's like, oh, we got the freedom guy in there. Yeah. Okay, so now Trump's in. Biden couldn't have gotten this Palantir crap through and all this stuff. Tell the audience about Palantir. What's going on with that?
Yeah, man. So Palantir is honestly kind of crazy when you delve into it, because you have Peter Thiel, who was very closely connected with Epstein, and was getting support from him very, very early on. Like, his father was actually overseeing like gold and uranium mines for the American government before Peter Thiel was who he is today. They had massive contracts with like the NSA. Way back in the day, the same like NSA mass surveillance stuff that they've ruled like unconstitutional, that is actively spying on like every single thing digitally. And essentially what Peter Thiel has done is sort of used his prominence from like PayPal and things like that, and money sort of rained onto him by investors like Epstein to position himself as sort of the de facto central hub for the government. So when it comes to like military operations, when it comes to law enforcement, now especially with like Doge, there were a lot of like Peter Thiel picks and Palantir alumni that were installed in Doge when that was happening. And now they're talking about doing all of the medical information for everyone as well. So you're talking like IRS, tax, legal information, all sorts of things, and it's basically become like this huge hub. And it's not like Palantir has like some sort of secret, super sophisticated model. It's essentially like a spin-off of like the Aladdin model that BlackRock uses, which was created by DARPA. Go figure. And that was sort of used to rig our economy into like the speculative based economy that we have now, where they can just like rig everything and then, prop up companies artificially and things like that. And it's the Monte Carlo multi-cluster models. And essentially what gives their AI the power is all of the access that it has, because an AI is really only as effective as like the data sets that it can be trained on. So when you have an AI that's like capable of being trained on everything, not only that we put publicly online, but also all the things that we assume are private and stored digitally and things like that, it becomes that omnipotent, omnipresent sort of AI that is building the backbone for that 6G. And I mean, he has contracts with America. He has contracts with Israel, obviously. He has contracts with all sorts of like European countries, Canada. And so it's slowly like building this foundation for like a digital one world global government system that's powered by AI.
So that's what they want. They want a one world global Fabian socialist technocracy where you have communism on the social side and technocracy on the so-called financial side, right? The economic side. And you're basically a slave to the state until what? Until they eventually get it to the point where they don't need us anymore and they kill us all?
So there have been companies that have come out that are actually like creating brain cells and grafting them onto like silicon chips. They have actually actively come out, I think in like the last 2 weeks, and said that they are now using that technology to power an AI model. And I know it sounds like science fiction and ridiculous, but you know, when we look at like all of the things that have come out now and sort of like this retrospective filter of like, there's no way that they're possibly doing that. They're openly admitting it. They're actually bragging about it these days. And I think it's because like transhumanism has sort of captured not only like Silicon Valley, but the scientific communities. And that was all sort of set up by like Robert Maxwell and, you know, his like pay to play sort of system that he set up within the scientific communities and stuff, and it's basically created this huge culture shift. I mean, you think about things like plastic surgery, steroid use, like all of these things are technically versions of the trans thing. That's transhumanism, you know, and I think that was sort of opening the door to normalize transhumanism and you know, transitioning us from biological, you know, base humans as we are into like this sort of quasi chimera of like human, you know, machine. And that's essentially just to make us programmable, which is their ultimate goal. Is they want us to be able to, like, they want to be able to type something in a keyboard and change our behaviors.
It's all very Talmudic, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You look into like the Talmud and the Zohar, the Tanya brings up a lot of the like transhumanist stuff as well, and all of that is like very, very deeply held religious beliefs of the same Chabad Lubavitch people that are funding Palantir and in bed with Trump and you know, all these global governments. So it's one of those things where it's like you can see the pieces moving into place and stuff, and I'm just like, when is the shoe gonna drop?
Well, they're creating a Frankenstein, in my opinion. I could be wrong. We were talking, it goes back to the wisdom thing. These people have literally no wisdom.
Yeah.
None. They have no wisdom.
I think the hubris is there a lot. Like, I think that I see, you know, I'm seeing like layman resistance to like the data centers and stuff. And I think that that's honestly why they're like rushing to build them in space, because once they're actually up and all running and people kind of see the impact that AI and all of these data centers and the EMF and 6G are going to have, that people are going to want to do something about it, whether, you know, that's through legislative means or physical force. Like, I don't know what that looks like. I'd never encourage, you know, people to go do things to put themselves in prison. Per se, but I think that they kind of feel like the deal's already sealed, but they're also creating like these contingencies by doing like the space cloud, and you know, you have Larry Ellison buying up basically all the media companies so that Oracle and things like that, Microsoft, Google, Amazon,
TikTok. Don't underestimate
TikTok.
TikTok. Don't underestimate how important that is. That's the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when you look at it too, it's like you know, you're starting to see like active censorship there. I mean, I'm basically in full belief now that we have like dead internet theory is just dead internet reality anymore. And now it's basically like open the floodgates for the same, you know, like bot manufacturing and like AI generated videos. I mean, there's like influencers getting paid $7,000 per post for positive posts about Israel.
Yeah,
and apparently they're not paying that out. I saw like headlines coming out about that today.
I heard that might be it might be bullshit, but it's funny even if it isn't.
Yeah.
They're not going to pay people.
Yeah, it wouldn't be out of character for them. I'll say that.
No. There's a funny. This is totally off the wall, but have you ever, you know, the ADL was founded because that dude owned the pencil factory down in Georgia, raped and killed a little girl.
Yeah.
And he got
Frank.
Leo Frank, yeah. So the funny thing about Leo Frank is that I'm paraphrasing this story, but he was supposed to pay the black guy that he was pinning the thing on. And he wouldn't pay him,
and that's
so
why
he stiffed him. I always thought that was really funny.
That checks out.
Yeah, it checks out.
Speaking
of, go ahead.
Actually, real quick on Leo Frank, like it's crazy because they had like paid propaganda coming out from people like Thomas Edison spoke out about Leo Frank. And like all of these other people that were like high profile at the time, like they ended up weighing in, and
in Leo Frank's favor.
Yeah.
Oh my God! I mean, you look at that. I've looked into that, It's just blatantly obvious he did it, and he's a disgusting human being, or he was a disgusting human being. And that was back in the day when you could clean things up. They just took him out and hung his ass. And you know, and it's like the governor that was it the governor that pardoned him was completely he moved to New York after or left to New York. He was completely and totally financed by Zionists, and he ran. And it's like you know, you look at the riots in 2020. I mean, if people didn't cuck their security out to the government cops, I mean, people could go down there and have cleaned that up real quick.
Yeah,
that would have been over like that. If the men could have gone down there and cleaned that up, it'd have been over. If you need 100 guys, it would have been over.
Yeah,
put them up in buildings and clean it up real quick. Boom, they're running off them. That you'll never see them again. But that's not the situation we're in. And we have so many. We go on this in Barnum World. We have so many people. I mean, the most hate I got for Barnum World was, "How dare you go after the cops? I know a lot of good cops and." My uncle's a cop. It's like, you don't understand the situation. It doesn't matter that there's good cops.
Yeah.
They're funded and financed by the state. They work for the state. They don't protect and serve you. They protect and serve the system that enslaves you. I don't understand how you can't. Al, you look at the COVID thing. Do you think any of these politicians could have come in and said, get in your house, we're locking down? I'd say, you know, they couldn't have done anything they did without with the goons from the state. Yeah. None of that would have worked. And it's such a massive Archimedes lever that people just can't wrap their head around because they've been so programmed and brainwashed because they want law and order, they want an organized society, but they can't. So they've been brainwashed to believe in this back the blue, protect and serve horse shit, and got suckered into believing in the government's armed goons.
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes back to like that same like Hegelian dialectic where it's like you know, they create the chaos to justify the order. So a lot of the times they'll end up doing like some sort of MK Ultra style stuff on, you know, somebody who's like emotionally vulnerable or in a really tough spot. I think that's where a lot of like the mass shooters end up coming from is they're targeted 100%. By the government based on like their posts or like their family history or something like that. I think that they're in bed with a lot of like the gangs as well. I think the gangs are getting like, you know, private either military or some sort of like government intelligence training and coordination and facilitation, at least on certain levels. And I think that is all just to drive people and to think like there's no way we could possibly ever govern ourselves. There's way too many crazy people out there. And, you know, I am in a firm belief that like we could all actually govern ourselves, and they create this world that we live in that's full of all of this shit that happens all the time, where, you know, they artificially inflate headlines, they suppress other headlines. So even things that happen organically sometimes are propositioned, you know, for a motive. And I think that people just need to understand, like, we are incredible. Like, we look at all of human history and all of the incredible things that we've accomplished. And I think that, you know, if you think that we aren't capable of doing things like that without some sort of like referee or parent in the government, that they've convinced you that you're not as incredible as a specimen as you are. Like, I think all of us are capable of great things, you know, through the right amount of effort and discipline, but the government wants to convince you that we're not. And that's just like their own survivalist sort of thing. And like, you know, they want to keep getting paid to do the worst things possible, and they want to keep lying to people and being on TV and, you know, being the decision maker, quote unquote. And so, you know, I don't know why people feel that way, that we need to like have some sort of babysitter for everybody in the world. But I think that people are way more capable than we give ourselves credit for. And, you know, I would just say anybody that thinks otherwise, like, prove me wrong. You know, try to govern yourself and try to like start networks and local things and opt out of stuff. And, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, you know, you bring up something that I've just been thinking about. I talked to T. Snyder. I don't know if you know who that is. He's a filmmaker.
T is great, yeah.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago, and it came out, and it's way too early for me to like really put it out. But I'm like, oh well, here we are, because I might not be the person to do it. But I think humanity needs a program of recovery.
Yeah.
I don't know what you know about AA. But there's a program of recovery, which is the 12 steps, and then there's the 12 traditions, which is a program. It's the 12 traditions that protect AA from the alcoholic. Mm-hmm. anyways, it's a if you look into that, we need a program of recovery from our own enslavement. I don't exactly know how to say it. I don't want to say statism because I think that's corny, but enslavement. The first step to the recovery is admitting we have a problem.
Yeah.
That's the first step. And so, because we have to elevate our consciousness when you're talking about bottom up governance, right? That could be done, but it can't be done under the state of consciousness of humanity right now. Like we have to grow up, and that's really all. And I'm not sitting there harping on AA. People can make their own decision about it, but the program, and I've been around it, and it's a true anarchist program where it's impenetrable. It's totally impenetrable because of the way that it's set up. It's almost like the guy that wrote it was divinely inspired. The way that the traditions, I'm not doing a good job explaining this, and the program are set up that people, once they get through it, it's like somebody could come in there and try to screw around, and they have, and their organization dies, or people are just like, oh, that's great. You can go do that outside. We don't do that here.
Yeah.
And it's like the most loving, accepting place, and but it's like impenetrable. You know what I mean? And that's what we need. We need a program of recovery for the human race to transcend this enslavement. We are enslaved. People don't want to accept that, and that's why maybe you don't say a program of recovery from enslavement, because people immediately get angry at you about it. But I'm not a slave. Yeah, you are actually. But we need something, and the first step, like I said, is to admit that we have a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the number one problem in the entire world as far as like changing the culture, I think, is the reliance on money systems. I think that money sort of became a way to like alchemize will in people. So like if somebody's not doing something you want, you just pay them and they change their mind, they change their will and stuff. And I think that sort of scenario has been all too common throughout all of history, where like, to me, like somebody could say, we'll pay you $7,000 to post positive about Israel. And I'm like, I would rather learn how to grow my own potatoes and like, raise a cow and be able to feed like myself and my family, and those skill sets and stuff that I think have honestly like sort of fallen by the wayside due to like the money systems being able to rig the markets and have people, worry about like materialism and things like that. Like that's a huge thing for them as well, as like, you start to bring in like the Saturn worship stuff and like the god of materialism and the fact that this whole world is sort of like bound to this physical plane that is, mired in the obsession over the material. And I think that, once we're able to kind of see past that and see like intangible things like integrity and honesty and principle above everything else, like that's sort of why I like stay so steadfast in like that purity spiral sort of thing, is like the second that I compromise, now my integrity is now 99% what it was, and that's never gonna go back. And I think that that's what happens to everybody on like a mass scale, and that is sort of what has corrupted us to the point where we can't value other things, and it honestly just makes us childish, because like you look at a child, they're sort of like they don't have the forethought, they're just whatever's in front of them, they see it, the instant gratification stuff, all of it, man. I think all of it stems from that.
Well, yeah, but that's what government is. It's mommy and daddy. Mommy and daddy. Daddy, the Republican, they're going to keep us safe. Mommy is the Democrats. They're going to watch over you and protect you and provide you with what you need. You're not wrong about the money, but if you got to take a step back, it is the level of consciousness that enables you to fall for that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And for all the people out there, that if there's somebody watching that feels like they have compromised their integrity, yeah, you can get it back, actually. I want to stay positive on that. I'm not saying you should compromise it. And probably, since you know better, that's not going to end well for you, even worse, because when you know better and then you do it, it's very problematic. The universe will punish you. But when you don't know better and you've screwed around, and then you learn, now you can now all of a sudden, and you might be in a storm, like I said earlier. And you have to fight your way back, and it's not easy. It's painful, but when I woke up pretty much when my daughter was born. But when I really was like let go of this, because I was for a while, I was like, oh, we just got to get the Constitution and all that nonsense, and people got to follow the Constitution. Once I really woke up and was like, okay, this is all bullshit. This was all lies from the beginning. I'm a sucker. I'm a slave. That was a painful experience for me. I mean, I mean, I used to like want to fight you if you said America wasn't the freest place in the world. Like I would get physically angry at you, you know, and like, it was like losing a girl that I was in love with. It was very painful. But you got to sit in the truth. And I've used this analogy 5,000 times. So people that listen to the show are probably sick of it, but it's like if you're in a town and the mob is killing people and burying them in the cemetery and you go and tell the cops and it turns out, oh, guess what? The cops are in the mob too. Yeah. Well, you're going to end up in the cemetery. Now, at least you know the cops are in the mob. You know the truth. Okay, now I can make a decision on how I'm going to proceed in this town. If I'm going to stay here, I need to know the whole thing is corrupt. If I'm going to, or I'm going to leave. You know what I mean? I'm not going to end up in the cemetery. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but like I said, it really is a consciousness thing. Do you believe in God?
Not personally. I think there is like a higher power. I don't know if like anybody on Earth in the history of humanity has ever sort of described it in the way that I sort of see it, in the sense that like I think that our spirituality is there. I think that that's why people make like, you know, what would be inherently like dumb decisions, like giving someone the shirt off your back, or like, you know, the inherent, like when you see something bad happen to somebody and it's like that makes you feel bad, you know, like empathy and just like common goodwill and stuff. I think that that's sort of like the manifestation of our humanity as a collective conscious, sort of exhibiting itself, because I've seen people do crazy things that don't make sense, endanger themselves, you know, just for what is the common good. And I think that is that higher power sort of showing itself.
So you're still working through this?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, I want to do the bombshell drop right now, because we've talked about this. Let's talk about the Jewish population, the diaspora population, because we both think that it's a lot higher than they're saying, right? Or where are you at with this?
So, you know, I don't think it's any, I guess, surprise that, you know, the question about their current population sort of comes up when you look back at things like the Holocaust reporting numbers and like the discrepancies with like the Red Cross reporting numbers, and the fact that, you know, 6 million were claimed to have been genocided years before the Holocaust even happened. And I think that what...
Not to cut you off, but that 6 million number's come up like a dozen times.
Yeah.
Corey Hughes has got a great video where he just goes through each one, and there's like newspaper articles that's their number, 6 million, to bring back the Mosaic.
Yeah.
Right, to bring back their well, they don't think Jesus was the return of God, so they're waiting for him to come back, and so they need 6 million Jews to be killed. But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where it's like, you know, to me, Hitler was sort of like a puppet that, you know, was sort of set up in order to help establish Israel and get a lot of the German Jews and like the Polish Jews and stuff into Israel, because that's where they wanted to go anyway. But that's also to say, like, I think that, you know, he was sort of that perfect scapegoat for them to drum up the numbers and, you know, have this sort of like extremist guy that the whole world could look at and say, like, this guy's evil. So whatever bad thing anybody says about him, you know, gonna believe. We teach that stuff in like our public schools. You know, they allegedly have records of like the entire population, but that's like locked down in Israel, and like no one's allowed to have public access to it. They have to vet everybody that actually, because they apparently have like all 6 million names, but they don't let people see them. They're in like an archive somewhere in Israel.
Wait, what do you mean they have the 6 million names? The people that they claim got killed in the Holocaust?
Yeah, I've seen rabbis and stuff like make that claim that they have like an itemized list of all 6 million of the deaths, but they don't let anybody see it.
So it means that they're bullshitting, is what you're saying?
Yeah. You know, that's 10 times out of 10. That would be my first guess.
It doesn't make any. I mean, look, there's some innocent non-combatant Jews who were murdered in World War II. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And were they picked up because they were Jewish? In case, absolutely, 100%. Was 50 million men killed in World War II, people killed in World War II? Yes. Were 32 million people massacred in the Bolshevik Russia, 1929 to 1932? Yeah. Where the Bolsheviks made the Nazis look like babies, and they're massacring, burning churches, raping nuns, burying nuns alive, pouring molten steel down priests' throats to kill them. Just what they did with that family. They killed the Romanovs. So go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. So it's one of those things where, I look at today and I kind of understand that maintaining a minority status seems to come with a lot of power, especially when it comes to like trying to garner sympathy towards things. And, we've seen that especially with like the leftist embrace of like identity politics and sort of using that as like a end all be all for, I guess, like a moral compass, where like if there's less of you, that makes you somehow a better person. I'm not sure how that works. I don't think that that's true. I think each individual should be judged based on the merit of their character. But
like the old everybody's trying to kill the trannies thing, and we're really victims. Everybody's trying to kill us. Yeah,
and it propagates that same victim mentality that, I see it's used for like different sets of minorities here in America as well as like Europe, and I think that when I take a good look at like the different collections of like populations in the world, it does seem like there seems to be a prevalent, higher than anticipated population of Jewish people, whether that's, the millions of Jews that are in, or I think it's close to over 1 million Jews in just New York. You have all of Israel, you have all of the Jewish population in like Ukraine, you have here in America. And then you start that's without even getting into like the heads of media positions or political boards or technology companies, finance sector, all of these things. Like I think that shows like a good sort of mirror to show like, hey, there is a higher concentration of people from this, specific group that are in positions of authority. But I also think that they fudge like the amount of them that there are so that they can keep up that victimization. Like, we're still recovering from the Holocaust. We've never gotten our population back. We need to protect us because there's so few of us left in the world. And, I see it the same way as like I would a Jehovah's Witness, where like they think only 1,000 of them or 10,000 of them are going to go to heaven. And it's like this religious extremist sort of thing. And the fact that they're able to use their position of authority to create this this like super minority status, to weasel their way into like different positions in like non-government organizations and charities and all of these other things. Like I think that's a huge reason why identity politics became as big as it is and has such like a firm grip on the way that we sort of conduct ourselves, is because it is a weapon. And I think that they use that weapon really effectively. And the lower your population is purported, the more effective the weapon.
Yeah, and wherever they go, they're pushing this mass democracy because they are basically, and we're talking about Jewish power and Jewish supremacy. We're not talking about, because remember, the regular walking Jew, the other reason why they do is to scare regular normal Jews that aren't involved in these higher power structures, scare the hell out of them. Like we are the chosen ones, and they all want to kill us. You basically have like an ethnic mafia that can go into these places and just are very organized and just take over. Just like I heard somebody say this recently in a podcast. I thought it was a good analogy. Kind of like the Italians was a tiny little group that took over in New York and a bunch of cities up in the Northeast back in the day, just because they were like a very tight-knit ethnic mafia. Yeah. And that's exactly, but these guys are international. And, I saw this video the other day. I don't know if it was AI or real. I couldn't really tell from the thing, but it looked like a bunch of Israelis crying, and Tel Aviv was getting bombed. And people were like, yeah, you get what you deserve, motherfucker, that kind of stuff. And I was like, I felt bad for those people crying, and I understand where people are coming from because but I would suggest to people, particularly in this country, in the United States, the Americans, that if you want to talk, you think Americans are brainwashed, you don't know anything until you've seen these Israeli people that have been brainwashed and brainwashed into a cult that tells them they're the chosen ones and all this other crazy shit. And they're victims too, and you might want to consider that, because if this shit ever hits a fan here, you don't think the world's going to be blaming American people for what their government's doing? Yeah. You might want to think about that, because, and there's really nothing new. Like, they want to blame. I hear this. I've seen this on Twitter. Like, you Americans are going to be suffering someday, and it's like what your government did, and it's like, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody's like, they have this like stupid meme where like the Americans and during the revolution, it's a big, strong dog. And then the little wimpy dog Americans today. And it's like, back in the day, there was a bunch of elites here with a bunch of money that wanted to take the land.
Yeah.
You know, now all of our elites are tied into the system. You know, it's like, what are we supposed to do? We're just kind of waiting it out.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, you know, every decision we don't get a say in, you know, at all. And yet somehow we're always the ones at fault when it comes to the decisions they make. And I think that's, you know, you mentioned Rome earlier, and, you know, the entire reason that they had set up the Senate was to give the illusion that like the peasants had some sort of say in the pecking order. And like they're open about like saying that they created that role specifically for that, in order to act as like this pressure relief valve. And, you know, I point out to figures like Thomas Massey and, you know, even like Ron Paul before him, where like I think that's sort of their role in these things, to make people think that there's a fighting chance and stuff. And I mean, at the end of the day, you know, when you say like what can we do about it, it's really, really hard, because, you know, I don't think that there's like a one size fits all answer. What I do know is that, you know, the government at the end of the day is a market. Really anything is a market, and it is reliant on your participation in it. So that's like, you know, things like paying taxes and joining up for the military, signing up for the police force, you know, giving money to companies that are in bed with the government or maybe fronts for the government and stuff. And really it all boils down to like, just become a 1600s, you know, era farmer. Take care of your own things. Stop worrying about money. Like, try to move to the barter system if you can. And I know it's like unrealistic and a pipe dream, but it's like you shoot for that and you'll land somewhere that's way better than where we are today. You know?
Again, I know I sound like a crazy person at this point, but I'm onto something that we need a program of recovery of some sort. I don't know what that looks like yet. But so how many Jews what's the Jewish population? Have you thought about it?
Honestly, that's where it sort of gets hard, because, you know, I wouldn't even have the first inkling. Like I haven't ever like dug into like census numbers, or I mean, I did look at like some World War II census censuses that were done by IBM back in the day. But I just sort of saw that as like a precursor to the modern day census that we have now, where they were like trying to use machines to count people to treat us as numbers right around the time we all got Social Security numbers. And so I don't really have like a good idea of how many there are. I believe that they say it's what, like 2% or 0.2%.
No, less 0.02. It's like, I think they're saying their numbers, and it moves around, because I did some half-assed internet research on it, but it's like 16 to 18 million. But then they have this other population is the law of return. So all the people that are allowed to go back to Israel, and that's like 24 million.
Yeah.
But they're freaking everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's really like kind of like, you know, obviously subjective and anecdotal, but everywhere I go, every city I go, there's tons of Jews, and there are tons of Ashkenazi Jews.
And even beyond like the you know, genealogical aspect, like you have a lot of non-Jewish people that have converted, or like they actively openly practice Zionism, or what have you. And that's one of the things too, where it's like I can't necessarily fault like somebody that's like born Jewish, you know, that's not really something you choose or, you know, really have anything over, but it's the belief system to me that I think is really the huge issue. It's just hard because you do have this overlap of like the belief system getting passed down through generations, which are where the genealogy aspect comes from. But I do think that the belief system is like hugely problematic. I think that there's especially like certain sects like that Chabad Lubavitch sect, like they're violent extremists. They will do anything in their power to accomplish their goals. They don't care how many people have to die. They don't care if they have to use people like Epstein to traffic children. And because like Epstein grew up in a Chabad community. He was very, very close with the Chabad Lubavitch, and like that's where Howard Lutnick is from. is the Chabad Lubavitch community. That's what Ben Shapiro is a part of. You had Trump going to that Rabbi Rebbe, the Schneerson. That's like that's the guy that they think is coming back. That's their Jesus.
Schneerson. He's buried in New York, right? Where these are the guys that had the tunnels and the mattresses and everything in New York. And then all of a sudden they just went in and filled the tunnels.
Yeah.
What other group, you find tunnels underground, what other group would they just roll in, fill the tunnels? Oh, no, it's all over now. No more evidence.
Yeah. I still think that that's probably one of the funniest things to ever happen in history. They got caught completely with their pants down. Like, there's nothing that could ever justify it. I mean, they were living like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're in the sewers, like, eating pizza and...
Yeah. Did you see the interviews I did? I went to an event here and just off the cuff and interviewed like several of those people. Some of them weren't Chabad. Some of them were.
Yeah, I had seen one of your conversations with the Chabad rabbi, and sort of like questioning him on things like that, and like asking him about the Kabbalah and stuff. And he seemed to like do a really good job of trying to make light of it and like pretending like he didn't know as much as he knew.
Right.
I was watching that and I was like, there's no way you're a rabbi and you don't know this. Like,
right. Yeah. They had their canned answers. It's like when you, and like, I think some of them were just really nice people that just were just regular. I mean, I could be wrong. Just kind of walking, just like, rank and file that don't understand what they're involved in. I don't know because I asked them, yeah, exactly. So when you ask, say, are you the chosen ones? Well, they're all like, well, we all have our role and God loves us all and blah, blah. And it's like, okay, I should ask them, do I have a soul? I should have asked them that. I look back on it. Because I love my dog, my golden retriever. That's the kind of love that they have for us. You know what I mean? Whereas
he would have said that you have a Kelly pot, or you are the Kelly pot, which is that is their terminology for the husk. And that is what like all Gentiles or Goyim are Kelly pot, and they believe that is what needs to be shed in order for them to reach enlightenment. Shed being cold, controlled, pacified, and submissive.
So wait a minute. So they need to do that for themselves?
Yeah, they think that like in order to fulfill their prophecy, they have to shed this husk that is us, like Edom, the West. The non-Jewish people, and in order for them to fulfill their prophecy, like they have to get rid of us in one way or another.
So shed us, does that mean like eliminate us? Interesting.
Eliminate, control.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the rabbis that will all have 2,500 slaves and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing people don't understand is that when they wouldn't lie to us or they wouldn't do this. There's nothing they won't do because they consider you a non-human in a way. Like their goal is to what you said. So by any means necessary with these people, like it's God's will.
Yeah.
Like this is God's will. So they don't care about lying to you and cheating you and sending your kids off to die in their stupid ass wars or, transgendering your children, whatever kind of subversive stuff that's getting pushed through the society. I mean, it always goes back to the same group. So if you keep opening the doors, it ends up back the guy at the top of the mountain starting the avalanche. It's very interesting.
I mean, I will say, like, look at all of the depraved things that have come out of like the Epstein file, and with the Epstein files, like that was like 1 or 2 email inboxes that we got. We didn't get like the signal calls or the the encrypted chats or anything that was ever mentioned in person. And like people think that all of those things are deplorable, right? Rightfully so, they are. Like the child trafficking, the human experimentation, the money laundering, all of that's kosher to these people. And I think that's what it should be eye-opening is like, under especially like the more extreme sects of Judaism, like these are things that are encouraged within these communities and stuff in order to accomplish the greater overall goal of diminishing, the non-members and making themselves the elite world power.
Well, why did they? I think they released those files the way they did was they had to release the pressure cooker to release them, and then they just sprayed them out with a lot of bullshit in them to just kind of get everybody running around and people like grabbing, because they released all those like people calling the FBI and claiming, hey, you know, these fake claims and all this fake stuff with the real stuff in there. So you got to dig around. And then there's all kinds of people finding something weird and spraying it out to get clicks. And so it was more of like a disinformation campaign.
Yeah. Yeah. I sort of saw it as like a world, because, you know, I go back to like the Saturn worship stuff, and a lot of that, their idea is like the ultimate currency is time. And so if they can, even if they lose a little bit of ground by like everyone finding out that there's like a global ring, you know, it's going on, it's like, he's dead, he's gone, there's nothing that, you know, we can do about yesterday. You know, let's move on to this next topic. And I think that, you know, there's huge issue with that, because I don't know if, because it seems to me that people are just willingly, like, they just move on to the very next thing, and like whatever is fed to us, that becomes the new talking point. And people don't really like plant their feet these days.
I mean, did they ever? We don't know, because nobody's ever dealt with this kind of digital control, this digital information, the screens. I mean, as far as we know, at least our known history. So we don't know. I don't think they'd ever, I mean, would any human ever plant their feet when they're getting bombarded like this? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, my approach was like, you know, I didn't really like share a whole lot that came from the drops. There were a couple like Epstein, like Bitcoin connections that I kind of had already assumed through his like connections to like Joyshu Ito, but I thought that like a lot of the Brock Pierce stuff kind of like flew under the radar. And
I interviewed him once, not to cut you off. I interviewed him years ago at a conference, but go ahead.
Interesting. Did he ever bring up his Epstein connections or anything?
No, that stuff. I didn't even know.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you or anything.
No, I didn't know anything about that when I interviewed him. I mean, I'd tell you if I did. I would have asked him. I didn't know anything about. This was like when I was first getting going. That's where I met Larkin, and he was just a speaker. I just grabbed him. It was like Brock. I didn't even know who he was. I didn't know much about crypto, you know, and I interviewed him, and then I started looking into it later, and there was all this like connections with him with that director Bryan Singer and the all that stuff in Hollywood. Yeah. But go ahead, I cut you off. What were you saying?
Oh, you're good. But you know, like looking into things like that, I think that one thing that like truly flies under the radar is his like scientific endeavors as far as Epstein goes. Like, I think that, you know, when it comes to like the cannibalism stuff and like the global elites, like you should already assume that the global elites are terrible people. But I think that it's like, you know, look at this stuff while we build technocracy in the background, and while we transhumanize everybody, and we get Palantir injected into everything. And I think that a lot of that is sort of what's going on. But there are like morsels of information that add up to a bigger, more relevant picture that is going to affect us in the future, and not something that is now no longer, like the Epstein network's gone. As far as like him and being a central figure, like it's all digital now, and it's all through smartphone tracking and Palantir and Mossad and CIA, MI6, NSA, things like that. And so, you know, I wonder if, you know, we're ever going to get to the point where, you know, people can see through things like that. Because I think that there is merit to like the sex trafficking stuff and you know, some of the more sensationalized headlines, but really like seeing through all of that in order to see the most like relevant and prevalent information. You know, I wonder if that's, I feel alone doing that anyway. Like I kind of looked past all of the child trafficking stuff, and I was looking at like the money laundering, the science, the crypto connections and stuff, and I think that was all building the system that is to come, and it's still, you know, running today, like with Google and Operation Stargate and Oracle and Palantir and all those things.
Well, you know, I mean, Charlie Robinson's talked a lot about that too. Is like you guys are, and so is actually Whitney Webb, hasn't she? I mean, she's talked about it. Yeah. Where it's like, you guys are missing the ball here. You're focused on the ball, and you're missing what's actually going on. They're pointing that little red dot. That's what they do with people all the time. You do with cats. You just point the red dot. But they're not bombing Iran because they wanted you to forget about Epstein. They don't give a shit. They're bombing Iran as a much deeper, darker situation going on. And so, okay, so 10 years was the last question. 10 years from now, what's going on? How does everything look?
Oh,
Your
man.
prediction, your mind, in your head.
So 10 years from now, we are potentially, we're already in 6G. We are potentially on the building blocks for 7G. I think that things like doctors and lawyers will begin to, like human doctors and human lawyers and human accountants and things like that will slowly start to fall to the wayside. With things like AI and automation. I think that there's going to be a huge move of at least U.S. fiat currency in our treasury bonds and things like that moved onto the crypto space, at least the ones that haven't already. And it's going to be where things like Tether and Ripple and things like that will be able to be used at like a POS, very much like you do like Visa, MasterCard these days. I think that we will be in the process of using like free speech and censorship and digital ID laws to start delving out like punishment reward systems to people based on their online behavior. So speaking out against government or like criticizing the ADL. I think that could lead to people not being able to like get approved for home loans or not being able to shop at certain restaurants and stuff. And, you know, in so many words, a sort of social credit system. And I think all of that's going to be sort of powered by, you know, like these massive data centers and you know, like you have things like the ADL partnering with like a lot of these data centers and stuff in order to use AI to moderate social media. And I think that's going to be a thing, but it's going to affect like the money that you're able to make in this system. I think it's going to affect like your ability to access different facets of society. And, you know, I think eventually we're going to get to the point where I'm sure they're already doing it now, but they're talking about like in real time being able to analyze brain waves and translate those into recognizable speech. So essentially, effectively reading your mind. And MIT has even published studies on that and neurological neuromodulation, where they're able to use EMF signals to change the way your neurons fire. They're claiming it's going to be used to cure like Alzheimer's and going to be used for health like they always do.
Yep.
But I think, you know, 10 years from now, we could very well see like the early seedings of what could become like a global hive mind.
So you're black-pilled.
Yes. Yeah. I'm white-pilled individually. Like, I think I can do...
Well, I don't know how you could be if you end up in that situation. Good luck. I don't care how much of a farm you got. They're not going to leave you alone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, I feel at least competent enough to resist and, you know, not acquiesce, at least. I'm so black-pilled when it comes to other people, man. Like, I have tried for close to a year to get people to like stop focusing on the politics, stop focusing on the bills that they're passing in Congress, look at the military technology, look at the science applications, like this is what's coming. And people are like, he's still better than Kamala. And I'm like, you're the problem, bro. Like, it's not about a president. It goes so much bigger than that. It is the military industrial complex with like these religious extremist groups and secret societies and the financial institutions, and they're running the whole fucking world. And it doesn't matter who the president is. And they're like, well, yeah, but he's still better than Kamala. And it just makes me want to rip my hair out. I'm like, we're never going to have like a great mass awakening because people can't even like agree on what color the fucking sky is. You know, it's crazy.
Well, where could people find that? First of all, I was talking about this with you before we started shooting. I'm getting one of those shirts. I love that shirt. Show the audience that shirt. That's a great shirt. Really
Thanks,
is.
Man.
It's a guy meditating with lies. It's all the screens. I love it.
Yeah, it's lies on the computer, the TV, and the politicians.
So where can people find you? What should they do if they do want to try to do something? What should they just go to your website or go to your link tree or where should they find? I know you said at the beginning, but give me your links again. Where should people find you?
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter, on Rumble, on YouTube. That's sort of like the three places that I stay the most. Most of it's on Twitter. As far as like information and stuff, I would recommend people go look at my research into like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Technocracy itself. Going back over 100 years and tying in things like the Roosevelts. They're they're very, very involved and were sort of linchpins to what we have today. The Trump administration, basically everything that I've been able to set aside time. And, you know, as far as like what to do, I think that everyone sort of has like this individual responsibility to sort of save themselves. But that is also taking into account, like, I think there are very well-intentioned people whose hearts are in the right place, their integrity is intact, and like I think there's 1,000 things that you know that you could probably share with me to like better my individual resistance, or you know, I think that you are much better at like networking with people and being able to establish like accomplishing films, man. That's not something that I have like the wherewithal to do, and you know, I could maybe teach you a thing or two about installing a water heater, and you know, so there's there's good things that we can like take from each other in order to apply that and sort of strengthen that. And, you know, to all the people that maybe want to form like a collective with that, I say more power to you. You know, always stay vigilant, always be aware of the people that are, you know, in those circles and maybe driving things and stuff and their motivations. But at the end of the day, like, I think that trust in yourself, you know, trust your family, trust your immediate friends, the people that were there, you know, before we had all this digital shit that drove us all apart, and you know, network with your neighbor, like get to know them, because at the end of the day, like when the shoe drops and the drones are coming, that's going to be the guy that you want on your side, is the guy living next to you, the guy in your town, like the people that are physically accessible to you. And if you can get off fiat and create your own trading network where you don't need the newest iPhone, but you want good, clean produce and good, clean meat and things like that, like you're going to get that locally and stuff. And so I say, like, it's really dependent on how far people want to go. You know, even the Amish have to deal with satellites, but you do get to decide how much of that say that they get, at least at that level, you know, as far as like unplugging and creating your own networks and opting out and like alternatives and parallel networks and stuff.
Yeah, we're going to have to be like the proles in 1984.
Yeah.
Just living off the thing, and just once they get you wrapped in, I don't think you're going to get out. Once you stay out of it, it starts with your consciousness. You have to just mentally understand what you're dealing with and know what you're dealing with, and stop fooling yourself into believing you're going to vote, or the government just needs to be fixed. It's just, the system is what the system does.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's a weapon, and
that's right.
As long as you're participating in it, it's being used against you.
You're an active participant in your own enslavement as long as you participate in this ridiculous so-called system.
Yeah.
All right, brother. It was great talking with you, man.
Hey, likewise, man. Thank you so much. You know, again, love your films. Showed it to a couple more people, and I think it really does help, man. If we can get through and say these truths, it might take 1,000 different ways, but your way seems to be really effective, man. Thank you for everything you do.
All right, thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the show. You can follow me on Twitter if you want at Tregsman with 2 G's and an S, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Drew Media TV. We also have a Rumble channel, Drew Media, if you prefer there. I know a lot of people don't like YouTube. Also, if you're listening to the podcast, like on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever, if it's not too much of a pain and you like the show, give it 5 stars so we can get some help from the algorithm. Otherwise, all the other links to our social media will be in the show notes, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.